time. Okay, welcome to our May 11th Council Workshop. We'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Ashley, you want to take the roll call?
Mike Hobson.
Here.
Marilyn Early.
Here.
Deborah Nelson.
Here.
John Vanny.
He's excused.
John Vanny is excused. Cam Shreddy.
Here.
Jessica Stipples.
Here.
Michelle Blight.
Here. Okay. Madam Mayor, I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Question?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, before I introduce our guest this evening, I just want to make everybody aware that May 17th through 23rd is National Public Works Week. And I signed a proclamation to acknowledge and recognize the contributions of our public works staff and the management that supply the functions like water, sewer, streets, solid waste collection that bring health, safety, and comfort to our citizens who depend on these. So I hope you'll all join me next week in acknowledging our public works workers. And at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Lisa Lefebvre, the CEO of the Port of Everett. Welcome, Lisa.
Hello. Hi, everybody. This is the first time I've ever been a guest speaker through a Zoom meeting like this before. Times have changed.
The new norm.
It is. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here on Zoom. I hope you guys had for those of you who did, have a wonderful Mother's Day. Got to enjoy some of the sun. I don't know if I'm able to share a PowerPoint presentation. I could share my screen. Do we allow that or?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. For scheduled speakers, we do.
Okay. I will share my screen and kind of just walk through some of the highlights, what's going on in this new world we live in and how it affects some of the initiatives that the port's working on, particularly as it relates to the CIC and cargo development and so forth. So I will get this up and I will be brief. I know I have less than 10 minutes and then I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have, including what's going to happen with our waterfront events. So, which is not a lot. Okay, so let me go ahead and try to see how dangerous I can be with this. Okay. All right, share screen. Can you see my?
We can.
Yep.
You can? Oh, good. Okay, so let me just start it here real quick. So again, just a quick Port of Everett update. As we mentioned, and when we were doing our partnership with the Cascade Industrial Center, I know, speaking for myself and our team, we have enjoyed very much working with city leadership as well as the staff. You guys are a great partner, and we're really excited for what comes down the line. One of the ways we operate, we are essential business given the current climate. So we've been up and operational. I'll talk a little bit about that. But we look at everything through the lens of balance and wanting to try to ensure we've got the industrial waterfront, the recreational waterfront, and then also the light manufacturing uses. And it's our belief that if we do that properly, it creates a balanced waterfront where people can, sorry for the cliche, but live, work, and play. And you can see how we have our waterfront set up since our centennial. We believe it's all a cog. 60% of the jobs in Washington are in Snohomish County are tied to trade, and we expect that to continue to grow, especially as Arlington continues to grow, especially with the developments around the airport and all the work in the Cascade Industrial Center that you guys have led. We actually are updating our economic benefits, which is almost a sad thing because we've had a lot of growth over the last 10 years or 5 years since we did the update last time. And what they're doing is they're looking at our economic benefits through the lens of 2019. And essentially what's going to happen is that's going to be a benchmark that we're going to be working back toward, given the job loss that we've seen, particularly on the waterfront, in some of our airline industry and things like that. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But you can see that the working waterfront is the main cog. It's also the revenue generator. And that allows us to bring the economic benefits and the community investment and also support industrial development in our region in an environmentally friendly way. So this is my depressing slide, and then I'll go to the happier slide. But we, pre-COVID, the port's outlook was very bright. We have just completed in the last 5 years, $150 million in capital investments on the Everett waterfront. We acquired the Kimberly-Clark property, and through the purchase and sale agreement, required the triggering of the rubble removal and cleanup. And I wanted to personally thank Mayor and team for supporting that effort. We are going back at it again because of some technical difficulties, I guess you could say. But anyway, we very much appreciate the support that we've got on that project. Waterfront Place was going strong. Housing was under construction. Hotel Indigo had just opened up, and we had plans to build new restaurant pads. Having restaurants commit to capital, particularly in an unproven market, has been challenging. And so we wanted to provide the capital infrastructure for the restaurants to be able to come in. Riverside Business Park was fully developed. We had just got done signing an agreement with Marysville and Arlington to help expand with economic development there, and then continuing to support the Navy. And like for many people, that all changed in February. I like to say the future is still bright, but it's a little bit different than what it looked like before. But I think I might have hopefully some good news as it relates to the CIC. Just a quick slide of what our offices will look like when we're able to start back up. We learned kind of late, and I'm sure you guys as well, that government services like opening our offices and so forth aren't going to be opening until phase 3. So when that does, we will open our offices on a restricted time frame. On May 5th, we did open all of our boat launches, kept our fuel dock open, Union Slough, and all of our public access we kept open. And May 5th, all of our construction projects that were tabled have resumed. So the Blue Heron Slough project up near Marysville on the I-5 corridor has started construction again. It's what a lot of people thought was another lane of I-5, but it's actually a new dike. So I apologize for those of you who thought you were going to have some traffic relief, but I guess COVID kind of did that for us all. And then we've been working on the housing project is resumed, as well as the cleanup for the Kimberly-Clark property. So what we know, we have been offering our tenants rent relief. We've been providing any kind of help we can to help our commercial tenants stay in business. Our Chief of Business Development, Terry Baciuello, has done a lot of recovery work through her role as economic development in helping other communities who've gone through disasters like this. And if a business closes because of COVID, it's 40% of them never reopen. And so we've been trying to do everything we can to keep all of our businesses in operation. And so I wanted to share that piece of information as well. And then, as you know, we are known in the international community as the Port of Boeing. And so that has impacts on us. So as the largest employer in Snohomish County, the Boeing company, really this is a situation that has really taken the tourism industry out at its knees. from airlines to cruise to restaurants to, well, really every industry, but in particularly how our community interacts from an economic perspective. I thought this was an interesting fact. In April, our nation saw as many takeoff and landings as in 1954. So they had almost, close to 70 years of progress that was just scaled back, and a lot of schedules that have been previously held are now being reduced, and you see that at Payne Field. The other piece of it too, and the reason it is that the federal package only provided operational expenses for airlines, not capital. And so what you're seeing is there's no demand for new aircraft, which is why Boeing recently just announced that it was going to be reducing production. And that directly impacts the port's economic and many, many other suppliers' financial outlook. So that's just something that we've been working through. Estimates say it's not as low as September 11th, but it's pretty close. So these were our planned investments on the waterfront. We are moving forward. We've completed the ones in the green and the yellow. We are working on the red one, which is our Mill A cleanup. However, the state's budget is expecting a very significant shortfall, and our Model Toxics Control Act, which is where we get our environmental cleanups, is expecting about a 40% reduction. So we are trying to judiciously as possible move forward with that in a responsible way, but also recognizing that the state doesn't have the financial capacity it once did to help with some of these key facility of statewide significance projects. To kind of put it in perspective, the state is estimating, I think it's a $7 billion budget shortfall, which is about 2 to 3 times worse than the 2008 recession. With all that, we are still moving forward on our Kimberly-Clark property. Port's mission is economic development. We wouldn't want to be in a situation where we shutter this project for economic reasons, and then when the economy rebounds, we are in the middle of a construction project. So usually the ports are the last ones to feel the effects of an economic downturn, and usually the first to recover. We also view it as our role is to keep jobs and stability in the economy as we go through these challenging times. And we see this project and its relation to the Cascade Industrial Center and the growth up there as a critical piece to be able to keep trade, commerce, and job growth happening in our region. So as you know, we signed our partnership, gosh, was that January? Seems like a lifetime ago. I can't believe it's already May. So we're very excited for this. I really do believe this is going to be a bright spot. One of the things that we learned with this whole pandemic is that the just-in-time delivery system that we had, it wasn't sustainable to respond to a crisis. There wasn't enough backlog and supplies in the ready to respond to these types of things. And so we expect there to likely be a growth in light industrial and US manufacturing as a result of this. At least our Chief of Business Development, Terry Baciuello, believes so, and she's usually right. So I'm gonna say that's gonna happen. And if not, we'll keep trying. So in terms of partnership, what we've been doing, we've met with your staff and mayor and so forth several times. Terry's in regular communication, but we do believe the construction of this cargo terminal to support additional capacity for manufacturing and so forth to the north is going to be really important to that growth. We are very interested in any kind of partnership to help with land development and bringing jobs to the area that you guys are focused on near your airport. We do have quite a bit of experience with airports, even though we don't have one. And so we have some resources to bring to the table as it relates to participating with the airport master plan. One of the big growth areas is this 5G broadband discussion and being able to get access to Wi-Fi and high-speed internet and so forth. And so we had planned to host a summit in June. We've kicked it, I think, to October, but we're still planning on doing that. And so the hope is that we can bring all the cities and regions and partners together to find out how we can improve our broadband. Last year, the port got the authority through the state to be able to perform this type of work through our economic development function. And so we're interested in exploring how we might be of service to Arlington and other communities up north. One of the things that we are working on is our foreign trade zone. This is essentially a tax incentive that we have. It's currently only located in our footprint of our seaport, but with the addition of Kimberly-Clark, we're moving from a geographical model of foreign trade to an acreage model of foreign trade, so that in the event that you have a customer that may want to locate near the airport that wants to benefit from this, we could have the opportunity to extend that to one of their facilities up there. And then lastly, anything we can do to help leverage advocacy and federal legislative aids, help your small businesses any way we can. We're always standing by, ready for to brainstorm and where possible, help support financially. And then just lastly, this is just kind of sums it up, but I did want to mention that I really do see that the bright spot is going to be the discussion and the onshoring of manufacturing. And I think that the CIC will grow from that. And hopefully all the investments that we've been making and the plans we've been making will be able to facilitate that. So lots more going on in other parts of the port in terms of the waterfront and public access and environment and all that stuff. But I wanted to keep it focused on the port's efforts around the Cascade Industrial Center and maritime commerce for this evening. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. And do you want me to stop sharing my screen at this point?
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Okay,
I can see everybody again.
there you go.
Lisa, did you want to mention anything at all about the potential for a center of excellence?
Oh, yes. I knew there's been a laundry list, but yeah, we are very much interested in, working on a center for excellence around one of the things that we've been focused on is robotics and agricultural and anything that we can do to diversify. We are so heavily reliant on the aerospace industry that I think we're interested in a diversification for robotics, advanced manufacturing and things like that. And I believe Terry might be on the call or on the Zoom, and she can explain in more detail what that center of excellence would look like if that would be helpful.
I think that would be helpful.
Okay, Terry, would you be able to explain the details on the Center of Excellence?
Hi, everybody. The Center of Excellence with the university. We're trying to figure out a way to set up some kind of, universities, the real value they have in communities is setting up centers of excellence that interact with the business community, and they get a lot of supporters from that, and they are able to give their students jobs and real-time experience. And so a number of centers of excellence around the area of robotics and food processing, things that are already major industries. In fact, I was doing a lot of research into Arlington and their industries, and I was really surprised at the number of fabricators that you have, which is a competency that you can build upon. So I'm planning some outreach to about 14 fabricators to try to find out what's the future for them. And we might find out that material sciences are really important, or whatever those things are in the industry that need more innovation around them. And that's where we could partner with Washington State University. So I think our meeting has got postponed twice, but I think we're meeting with him next week with the chancellor.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Lisa on a great presentation or the partnership we have with the port?
Yeah, I had a quick question.
Mhm.
One of the stats you were reading, Lisa, about the businesses closing around the port, and that you had said 40% of the businesses that temporarily closed ended up not reopening. I was just wondering where you got that stat.
Yeah, so that was from Terry again. She's participating in this economic developers. There's very few of them, but they have this big coalition that focuses on business recovery and retention. So Terry, I don't know, do you have where that stat came from?
Yeah. Actually, last year I was working through the International Council of Shopping Centers and the U.S. Economic Development Administration. I was selected, I guess, to go to Florida to work on the business recovery planning for the state for hurricane response. And that was all focused on business recovery. And 40% of businesses that close fail to reopen in most emergencies. And this is much more dramatic of an effect. And I think a lot of restaurants, a lot of organizations will have a difficult time reopening. And so that 40% is the number we're hearing around the region for restaurants and services that close. So
We lose her audio.
Yeah, I can't.
Oh. Terry, we lost you. Oh, she's freezing. So she's been Oh, we lost the audio. I could tell she's saying good stuff.
sorry.
I think she was, we also participate in the Greater Seattle Partners. And so a lot of it sounds like it might be anecdotal, but based on studying crisis and response in other parts of the region.
Thank you.
When I heard that number, I wondered possibly how many of those businesses might have been already in a default type situation where they might have closed anyways. So I thought 40% was kind of high. So I was just wondering, does that take into consideration anything like that they were already not doing so well?
Well, I will tell you two things. One, Terry did lose her audio, but she just chatted and said that it came from FEMA. So that's the source. And then in terms of default, I think that that's a typical theme. We're seeing that down at the port. A lot of people that are asking for rent relief are already behind in their rent, which is one of the reasons we structured our rent relief policy in a way that made them commit to a long term and bring their business current before they were given additional concessions. And so there was a lot of thought that went into that to make sure that they were sustainable long term, as opposed to giving them like a 2-3 months bailout and then having them have the same situation in a couple months from now.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, that only makes sense. You can give it to someone else that might have benefited more in the long run, right? Than someone that's already in a problem. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yep, no problem.
Anyone else have any questions? Terry and Lisa, thank you very much for the presentation.
Absolutely. We're so thankful to be here. This is a really neat way to participate. It's very, you can see everybody and
we're getting used to it.
Yeah.
I know it's becoming the new norm. So you can.
We also live stream these meetings on our YouTube channel too. So
I
we're able
saw.
to plug in at any time. Terry, I appreciate the work you're doing with our staff. I hear great compliments from the staff and the work that they do with you and your expertise and your smarts. So thank you.
All right.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. Okay, so we'll move into our workshop items for this evening. And first up, we have an appointment to the Parks, Arts, and Recreation Commission, and Sarah Lopez is with us.
Hi, good evening, City Council, Madam Mayor, and staff. So we recently had one commissioner leave the city of Arlington and moved outside city limits. So we had one vacancy, and we interviewed 3 people for the position. And we are recommending Jennifer Harrington to the Parks, Arts, and Recreation Commission. We also have 2 positions that are expired, Brittany Kleiman and Jennifer Eggers positions. They both reapplied for a second term or an additional term. And our committee is recommending to reappoint those 2 candidates.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Marilyn, were you on the interviews? Do you want to weigh in?
Yes, I did participate in the interviews, and we had 3 good candidates, but Jennifer just jumped out as an amazing addition. I mean, she's full of energy. I believe she works for Boeing, and just everything we heard from her or any discussion was some creative way to fix something or make it better. I mean, I don't know, Sarah, did you get the same feeling? I mean, it was just like she would be a wonderful addition. And of course,
she had lots of great ideas, and she's really involved in Bike to Work program at Boeing.
Yep.
So I think we could learn a lot from her. And she's a recreational worker at Boeing also. So I think she'll be a good fit.
Absolutely. And then Brittany and Jen are, they're excellent on the board too. So
They seem to really enjoy the work.
And Jennifer, I think she's great.
And I think that they would like to zoom in and our official meeting next week also.
Oh, we would like that. It's always good to get a chance to thank those who are volunteering. Does anybody else have any questions on this appointment and the 2 reappointments? I see heads shaking, so no. All right, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Sarah.
So our next item is the splash pad project closeout and acceptance. Good evening, Jim Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. Can everybody hear me adequately?
Yes.
Okay. This item before you is a little bit of a paperwork item. I come in front of council every now and then with a project closeout request. And this basically is a requirement of RCW 39.04 that after all the paperwork is filed, all the taxes have been paid, and we have clearance from the Department of Revenue, we have clearance from Labor and Industries, and clearance from the Employment Security Department, then we can move forward and finally accept and close out the project. So the first to close out I'm bringing before the council tonight is for the House Splash Pad project. That project created a beautiful addition to Haller Park. It had a basic price of $705,496.50. We had change orders that amounted to $56,312.57. With sales tax, that a final contract cost was $831,224.24. This project is now complete and it's ready to move forward into a closeout.
Thank you. And we're looking forward to when we get to the phase that the splash pad can reopen and hopefully have weather like we did this last weekend. Does anybody have any questions for Jim on the closeout?
I do have one question.
Oh, okay, we'll go to Mike and then Jessica.
Okay, this is just kind of an aside, but I understand that over the winter that there was a pipe break there somewhere. Is that accurate? Did I get accurate information on that?
There was a pipe break. One of the pipes that was going out to one of the toys, one of the features, it was going out to the udder head. We could never understand why we never had any pressure coming out of the udder head. And finally, when the park closed, we were able to research it, and there was a pipe that was broken. And the pipe was broken when they put the pipes in the ground first. When one of the concrete form workers was putting in his forms, he drove a form stake right through the pipe. We had to cut out a big piece of concrete. We dug up the pipe, we replaced the pipe, we backfilled it, we poured the concrete back up this springtime, and everything is ready, is clean, and the pad will be, we'll be doing some test runs on the pad in a couple months.
I see. Thank you.
Jessica, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was curious on the sales tax of construction services. Is that just based off of the supplies and the goods that we purchase for them to use?
That is based off of the cost that they charge us. We charge 9.2% sales tax in the city of Arlington. And sales tax is applicable on all construction activities except for construction activities that are associated with roadways and transportation systems.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
And Jim, thank you so much for your time earlier. I called you and you explained all these processes in detail to me. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Any other questions or comments?
No.
Okay, we'll move to the next closeout item, which is the 2019 utility pavement preservation closeout and acceptance.
Again, thank you very much, Madam Mayor and council members. This is another project closeout, and this is for the 2019 UDP project, the Utility and Pavement Preservation Project. This project was awarded to the low bidder with construction. It had a base bid of $1,742,831.50. We had approximately $84,186.56 worth of change orders, and there was $56,793.36 that was unbilled, coupled with some sales tax. The final contract cost came to $1,841,615.58.
Thank you, Jim. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
I was wondering if you could just remind me why there are no budget implications to this, even though we're just seeing final numbers.
Everything has been paid. The contract has been paid out, was paid out October, November of last year. It takes us months and months to get all the paperwork filed, to track down all the subcontractors to make sure that they paid the taxes, that they paid all their workers, and to get clearance from the Department of Revenue, from Labor and Industries, and from the Employment Security Department. That is a very, very long process.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Dan?
Could you clarify the unbilled portion just a little bit more? Are we going to eventually be billed for it, or it was just less money that they needed?
When we put a bid out, we put an estimated amount of quantities because we don't know at the time how much asphalt is actually going to be brought up, how much excavation is going to go on. So that was some of the estimated quantities that we did not bill because we did not have to do the work. The change orders, on the other hand, was some work that wasn't included in the bid project that we added to the contractor's project as he moved on.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question.
Deborah?
It's not pertaining to this, but this triggered me to thinking, and I could just be having a total senior moment, Jim, so forgive me if I am, but have we seen the 2020 pavement preservation list yet?
That went out to bid last Thursday. It's currently out for bid.
Okay, so I'm thinking right on time. I'm not lagging and not too far ahead. Okay, I was just curious.
And the project is estimated at over $3 million this year.
Yeah, I knew it was a big one. Thank you.
Hopefully we'll get favorable bids on that. Any other questions or comments on this item?
No.
Okay, so we'll move to the next item, which is also Jim Kelly, Waste Management Business and Occupation Tax Rate Increase.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor and council members. This item before you is pertaining to the waste management contract that we have with Waste Management. there is a clause in that contract that allows Waste Management to request a rate increase if there are any outside fees that they get charged. They are putting through a letter requesting that we amend the rates to accommodate a 0.25% B&O tax increase that was passed by the Washington State Legislature in 2019. Attached to Council Agenda Bill is a copy of the letter of request, and then also a copy of the rate structure and what the increases would be if the 0.25% moved forward.
Do you have any questions? Comments?
I'll just comment, as I looked through, it was just such very minute increases, so it doesn't look like it'll be a hardship to anybody.
That was my concern too, was the hardship, this, given that the situation that we're all in and the businesses are all in, I just find it, I started to cringe when I saw that, but if it's really minuscule, then I guess it's not a problem.
I think it would be nice to hear, a lot of utilities have done things to help their customers out. And I haven't heard of Waste Management, but maybe next week you could get some information about what they're doing to help relieve some of the burdens on their customers during this time.
I can do that. And if you would like, I could bring Marcella and have her join the Zoom meeting, and she can give a presentation at what Waste Management has been doing during the COVID-19 crisis.
Is that okay with everybody? Do you want to hear that?
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure Marcella is listening on YouTube tonight. I was speaking with her this afternoon, so I'll be calling you tomorrow morning.
We've seen a lot of utilities do a lot of great things to sort of take the burden off. But I have to admit, I looked through my emails, I didn't find any information from Waste Management, so it'd be good to see.
Okay, I will speak with Marcel tomorrow morning. I will make sure that we're ready for next Monday.
Excellent, thank you. Marilyn?
I just was wondering on the increase with the B&O tax, if we'll agree to this, but if we didn't, would it just be included in the contract the next time? I mean, would they add that in anyway?
They would.
When we renegotiate for the next contract?
It would most likely show up in September adjustment that they do every year.
Yeah. So it's going to happen one way or the other.
Yes.
Right? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members.
Okay, so we'll move on to our fifth item, which is the proposed revisions to Arlington Municipal Code titled 15.16 regarding fireworks. Paul.
Correct, Mayor. Thank you. This is, like the mayor just said, a revision, proposed revision to AMC 15.66 regarding fireworks. Last summer, we're going back into July and August of last year. We talked about this on August 5th. Council signed a resolution to put the question on the November 5th ballot as an advisory vote to the public, whether or not the public was interested in seeing the council take action on banning certain consumer grade fireworks. We did put that on the ballot November 5th, and the voters approved it by a very narrow margin, about less than 0.5%, but it was approved by that. And so that brings us to bringing it forward today for discussion. I'll remind council that this takes 365 days to be in effect if council chooses to take action on it. So if you did take action on it, this wouldn't go in effect until it would affect the 4th of July in 2021. It would not affect it this year. If you have any specific questions, Steve Peifel, our counsel, can also answer any questions or talk about anything that I might have missed.
Jessica?
So I had a question. I was trying to make sense of the allowances for, it kind of stated religious groups, right? And so when I went into the RCW a little bit more, it basically is saying any group, any date, any reason is fine, as long as it's got approval from the fire marshal. So I was wondering what your thoughts were on that.
So we didn't want to ban, the way this is written, it doesn't ban professional fireworks shows that have gone through the proper permitting process. That makes sense?
Yes, so would we allow more than one professional fireworks show in the city limits?
We do typically have more than one show. We have typically one 4th of July show. That's the big one that everybody thinks about. However, we have fireworks shows. Typically, communities have fireworks shows for like homecoming and different kinds of events throughout the year. And those are permitted through the city's process and then allowed if they meet the criteria.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other, Marilyn?
Well, just for those, you have to have a professional pyrotechnic guy or something that lights these fireworks off. You can't just get a permit.
Yeah, it
Go
has
to
to be a
the
license.
fire and do it, right?
Yeah, it has to be a licensed and bonded company that's
That's
doing
what I
the show.
Okay. Well, I just feel like we went out and it was a big deal to do the advisory vote. I think that was a huge decision on the council's part to go out and get the opinion of the citizens. We didn't have a large turnout and it was a close vote, but you know, that's democracy. You go out and you vote and one side wins and one doesn't, you know, and then you come together. And technically that's the way it's supposed to work anyway. So, you know, I think we should move forward on this. That's my opinion. I think it would be going against what the voters said if we don't.
Thank you. Jan?
You know, I've thought about this a lot, and I even asked Dave Kraske to send me, because I know we talked about it a lot last year when we came up with the vote, and to see how what kind of fires we had, or EMS, and those weren't extremely high. And I've been talking to a lot of people. I did that last year, and I've also done that since this was on the agenda the last few days. And everybody I have spoke to are for banning them. And it seems like the biggest issue with everybody was the noise it made and their animals. Mm-hmm. The also big thing was the garbage they left in the streets. Yeah. You know, I didn't have anyone who was concerned. I mean, I'm concerned about people getting hurt, you know, and fires in houses and stuff. But I was a little concerned with the numbers. I wish more people had voted, but I'm for moving forward. Marysville doesn't allow it. The county doesn't allow it in unincorporated areas. And if we don't, we're going to have a whole bunch of people that are going to come to Arlington just so they can shoot off fireworks. So I'm with Marilyn. I'm ready to move forward.
All right, thank you, Jan. Michelle, did you have your hand up?
I did, ma'am. I also believe we should move forward. I think like what 33% of our cities in the state have already outlawed them. And I think that the fireworks put so much risk on personal property and animals and people. And I hear the same things, that it comes down to the noise, and it's not just for the time frame that people are permitted to use them. People, I hear them go off a week before the 4th of July and a week after the 4th of July. And I feel like every year it keeps expanding. And the laws that we have say specifically when people can use it, but I see more and more people extend that time or do it prior. But it just seems like it's a non-ending thing. And the garbage, Jan, I've also heard that. And a big deal is people's animals. I guess people just don't know when to stop sending off their I don't even know what they're called, those big old loud rockets that almost shake your house. So I think that for me, it doesn't matter how close the vote was. The vote is the vote, and people voted in favor to ban. I don't think we should move forward to ban.
I'd like to add, as we're talking about this, though, is that this does take a year to go into effect, and so we have some time to educate the public. But cities who have gone through this and banned it, it's not an instantaneous thing. So I just want council to be aware of that. Marysville, for instance, there, the complaints went up the first year it was banned. Now that's probably likely because people were aware that it was banned, and rather than put up with it, they would call in, and so the city received more complaints. But there is a process to this where we educate and enforce it. So I just don't want to give the impression that 365 days later on July 4th, you won't hear fireworks ever again, because that hasn't been what cities have seen. But I will work with the chief, and we will come up with an enforcement plan so that we can get out and start educating and enforcing the law if you choose to pass it.
Deborah, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, well, I was going to ask Paul, is once you and the chief come up with that plan, will you bring that back to us? And so that we can have the correct information also to be sharing in our neighborhoods?
Yes, we will.
Thank you.
And I would just add, in my neighborhood, I mean, all along, anything other than consumer fireworks have been illegal in the city already. And that's just not abided by a majority of people who are doing fireworks out there. And I always say rules come into place not for the majority of people who follow them, but for that minority who really press it forward and make it harder on everybody else.
Yeah.
Well, and and for Chief Insurer and his team, I know that they're probably going to get a lot of phone calls on the first year that it does become illegal. And I recognize that, and I realize things don't happen overnight, but I think it's the appropriate steps based on what people want to see in our community.
And I have to commend Steve on writing the ordinance that does give some repercussions for that. So there is some mechanisms that the staff can use in dealing with enforcement. So I appreciate that. Jessica, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, so as you guys already know, because we've talked about this for a couple of years now, I'm with the 49.30%. And I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with our own perspective, right? So I don't have any pets, and my neighbors are super courteous and pick up all their garbage. And in fact, they're very open and warm and invite the neighbors over to come participate. So it's actually a very positive experience to me. So the reason I wanted to tell you guys that is because I'm the one who's set to make the motion, and I would not be voting in favor of it. So if somebody else would like to make the motion in favor of it, that would probably make more sense.
I would love to make that motion. Gosh, I would. If no one else wants to, I mean, I have no problem with that. I actually thought about that, Jessica, that you might have that opinion. Do your neighbors just light off the legal fireworks? They don't buy the ones from the tribe that are illegal anyway. So you're really lucky there. When my neighbor must spend, I don't know, $500 to $1,000 on illegal fireworks and lights them off right next to my house. And it's a mess, and we can't go anywhere because we have to protect our house from, if it's a hot day and I have a field below me, and I worry that it's going to catch on fire. I have to go and clean all the stuff off the roof. Well, my husband, and it's not all lovely like yours. I wish it was, because it used to be fun with the kids to have fireworks, and when it was the appropriate ones that are legal. But unfortunately, people have abused the law, and now here's where we are. So
have you found any success with?
Mike had his hand up, so do you mind if I let him
reply to
Go ahead and let Jessica speak.
Okay.
So I was just wondering if you had found that over the years with the neighbors that are setting off the illegal fireworks, is it helpful that when you call the police, like, did they stop? Are the police able to catch them?
we've never gone there. We have just talked to them and told them, and like my one neighbor went over and got his grass blower and blew all the red firecracker papers and all the stuff from the street, blew it over on this guy's lawn for him to clean it up. And he still, he eventually moved away, but unfortunately we have another family that likes to participate in that. And I wouldn't care if it was legal fireworks, but they aren't. They're just too much in a close quarters, like right next to you. And if you've been in the war situation in the military or something, and you've got that laying right next to you when you're sleeping, I mean, people have problems with that. It shakes your house. It's not right. So that's my opinion.
Mike, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to just make just a quick comment that I've been on the fence on this the whole time. I've never had a problem with it myself. I know other people do. And so when I look at this issue from my perspective, I look at the vote. And even though the vote was very, very close, the vote came down for banning the fireworks. And that's the way I will react to this issue.
Thank you. Deborah.
Just one other perspective too is, I will say it's not my neighbors that set off the illegal ones. They set off the legal ones, but I actually have people that come from out of town and park on my street and in the bank parking lot and set off the illegal ones. So it's not just neighbors. It's people who know that they can't do it in Marysville, because I asked them where they were from and they were from Marysville. So I just think this is the right thing to do. And I agree with Mike, the people voted, and whether it's one vote or 100,000 votes, it was the majority. So
And I
I'm
was
for
just
this.
wondering, have you had success with calling the police on the illegal fireworks?
I asked the people to leave, and if they didn't, I said I would call the police. They continued until about 11 o'clock at night. But again, I kind of knew what could our police do, because in fact, I think one year I did call the police and they said they couldn't do anything because they wouldn't get there in time. That was probably about 5 years ago.
Well, and plus they get there and then nobody admits that they're the ones doing the fireworks, especially if you have a group of people standing around. No one's going to say, oh yeah, that was me. And then it puts our police department in a situation where it looks like they're not doing anything, but they can't because they didn't actually catch someone committing the crime and putting off the fireworks that are illegal.
Any other comments or discussion on this item? All right, and Marilyn, I will put your name, or ask Wendy to put your name on the agenda.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Okay, let's move to our next item. Resolution establishing a moratorium on evictions. It says Paul Ellis.
Yeah, so this item was one that we talked about last week. Council member Hobson asked that we put this on the agenda for tonight for discussion. And we did, as like I said last week, doing it a week apart, we have really a limited amount of time to be able to do research on this. However, I think you all got the memo from Steve, and so I'll refer to him if you have any questions on that or any further discussion.
Well, I have some further discussion. For one thing, what I sent out and wrote to everybody, and I hope you all got it, there was actually an error on it. I had intended to include residential evictions as well as the small business and the nonprofits. So that was a mistake. It was an omission that I would correct when it comes to a vote. And I do want to say that I think there is a need for this. We are in an emergency. I also read very carefully Mr. Piffel's note on this and an opinion on this. And I understand the issue, the taking issue, but I would respond, I'm not the lawyer here, but I would respond by saying that this is a declared emergency. and that in those cases, such exceptions can be made, and that it is temporary. It's not a permanent thing, and that the people who would be refraining from eviction, they're not going to be waiving any monies that they are due, that they are still going to be, they still can expect to receive their rent or lease amounts. So so that was just kind of a counterpoint. It's also done in other places. I think I counted 10. This was in the middle of April. I counted 10 different places, including Everett, by the way. Most of them talk in terms of the residential evictions, having a moratorium on that. A few also included the commercial, and I think I saw one, maybe two, that included the nonprofits. So it's not something that's permanent. It's not going to hurt anybody. It should help people. And we're going to be in a real rough situation here with this virus and the effect on business. I think our speaker just a little bit ago mentioned 40%. I would like to see the small businesses in particular, as well as people who are renting or leasing, that they have a shot at recovering from this. And if they're served with eviction papers, they're out, they're done. This gives them a little breathing space. And I also added 120 days, 3 months later, so that they can have a shot at getting back on their feet. We, as a city, don't lose them as one of our small businesses, or maybe many of our small businesses, which means sales tax revenue to us as a city. So I see there are very good reasons to do this. And again, it's a temporary thing. It's an emergency situation. And I think it will do the city of Arlington a lot of good to be able to do this. And I do understand Mr. Pfeiffel's argument, and I know he'll probably want to say a few words about that.
We'll give him a minute to say something as well too. Jan?
Okay. I first of all totally agree with what Steve had said. We're in times that none of us have experienced before. Governor Inslee, he has put a moratorium on evictions for the state. We do not know now where we're going to be even in 2 weeks, and he may extend that even further. And this moratorium, actually 120 days, is 4 months, isn't it? Not 3. And
4 months.
Yes. And the thing about it is, Mike, there will be people that will be hurt if this were to pass, because every landlord isn't sitting on a big pile of money that they can wait for however long this first goes with the state, and then 4 more months with the ones for Arlington. And reading all of what Steve sent to us, and the cities, and I've read too, and I know the cities that have already done this, they will be sued. And all it will take is 1 or 2 cases to absorb an enormous amount of money. And we will end up losing, because we are saying, okay, you guys don't have to pay anything for X number of months. And the landlord is sitting there without any income whatsoever, because I'm sure some of those people, that's what they live on, is what they rent, whatever the facility is. So I am definitely not for this for several reasons, but I think with not knowing where the state's going to be in a month or 2 months, and it may be extended, I just don't want to see Arlington go ahead and do this, and then we're ended up in court with huge lawsuits.
Deborah, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. First, I want to say thank you to Paul and Steve for putting together this for us, so quickly. I appreciate that turnaround. And Mike, I appreciate your heart in what you're endeavoring here. And that part I think is good, but I'm not in favor of this. And I read through everything, and I wrote down 3 reasons. So one reason why I'm not in favor of it is because I think it is taking the taxpayer money to have towards litigation. And we know how expensive that can get. I don't feel like that would be a good steward of our taxpayer money. And I've learned to listen to the advice of our city attorney. I don't think he's ever steered us wrong in my 8 years on council. Secondly, I am a landowner, and no, not a commercial landowner, a residential landowner, but it's up to me to work with my renter. And just like I heard the port say, they were working with their renters. And to be honest, I don't want to be told by anybody how I have to deal with my own private property. And you don't know, just like Jan said, that money, that rental money could very well be paying my house payment. And what do I do without that? Do I go into default to the bank? So I think your heart is in the right place, but I think you're risking another level of business person's money. And I don't agree with that. And then thirdly, I really don't know that this moratorium would help the renters, because to me, it just seems like it's extending their debt. And I really appreciated what the port said, that before they were going to help a business, they had to make themselves right before they could receive any help or grant money. So I feel like right there we heard some good advice from a huge business entity of the port. And then I would just really like us to listen to our attorney. Thank you.
So Steve, I'm going to call on Michelle and then I'll let you weigh in. Go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you. Do we know specific businesses that are falling behind and need this help? I mean, I don't know, but I don't need to know specifically, but are there businesses in our community that aren't able to pay their rents currently? Does anybody know?
Don't know.
I don't have any direct knowledge of that. We know from last week when Kristen Garcia presented that we weren't having any issues on the airport. They hadn't taken advantage of any of the, late payments.
I guess I'm just asking because I think this is a wonderful thing to suggest and to offer, if there was a strong need for it, but I haven't heard that there's a strong need in our community for it. And I remember when this came up several weeks ago and Steve wrote back and explained legally why we might not get involved in this. And so I just don't know if it's needed right now at this point in time. I don't know of anyone that would need it, and maybe 3 months from now, someone might, but just thought I'd ask the question. Is there actually a need for it? And maybe you do know people, Mike, and I don't want their names, but maybe you do know.
So Steve, I would guess I'd ask you to address the council. I think you told us in your email that we don't have the authority to do this.
Well, let me say, first of all, that the memo that I put together was somewhat limited because I didn't have a great deal of time to put something together for the council in the time frame that I had. And so what I wanted to do was to present to the council my thoughts and observations about the principal legal issues that I thought you would have to look at if you were interested in pursuing this. And I was not sure whether the council would direct me to proceed to prepare an ordinance to implement this concept or not. And so I thought I would at least provide you with the framework for some conversation that you could have tonight, and then give me some direction about whether to prepare an ordinance. The Councilmember Hobson mentioned that his intention was to include both residential and commercial evictions. And there are slightly different considerations for the two of them. Obviously, the governor's proclamation has been directed to residential evictions. And there's currently the order from the proclamation from the governor that prohibits residential evictions from occurring at this time. And when that will be lifted, it's hard to say. There is no such prohibition in place from the governor's office relating to commercial evictions. There is a de facto moratorium in the sense because the Superior Court is largely closed. Although I will say, since this issue came up and I prepared my memo, the Superior Court for Snohomish County has issued a new temporary order on court operations, which suggests that some commercial evictions that if they're not barred, and residential evictions, if they're not barred by the governor's proclamation, could proceed with court hearings. So the issue is going to, and I think Councilmember Hobson is right in understanding that the issue is going to be become more widespread, because when the courts do open, I think you're then going to see more evictions occurring for right or wrong reasons. And I guess one of the questions is whether the council wants to take action on an extremely local level for an issue that may be better handled by the legislature by amending the RCW rather than Arlington's ordinances. We don't have anything in place that would clearly be easy for us to amend, assuming that we do have the power. And that's the other issue, is that there are potential legal obstacles in terms of whether the council has the authority. I didn't go into great detail in analyzing this or talking to the other jurisdictions that have adopted moratoria, in part because I wanted to make sure that council was going to direct me to go in that direction before I did that research. So that's kind of the additional information besides what was already in my memo, and certainly happy to answer any more specific questions if I can.
Jessica?
So I don't have a question for Steve. I'm not in favor of this for a couple reasons. And one of them that hasn't been mentioned is that the payback is too high. That it's good in theory to give a couple months postponed, but then when it comes time to pay and they haven't had business in 3 months, you're asking them to pay plus, because now they've got thousands of dollars of back pay that's due, that even if the landlord's willing to do in payments, it's still thousands of dollars added on top of their current rent. So then you're putting them in an even worse spot. So I know there's a lot of loans right now that have a further out payback time or a loan relief so that it's actually the payback is waived. So there are programs out there, but I feel like if we jump in with this one, that we're going to be setting them up.
So I guess Mr. Pipel put a question before the council of whether anybody wanted to direct, the council as a whole wanted to direct him to spend more time in writing an ordinance. And I think we should give him an answer on that.
You want to do a roll call
vote?
Barb?
Yeah, roll call.
Wait, this is a workshop, so I'm not doing a vote. So I would like you to give an indication. He's looking at the screen. You can shake your heads if you want.
No, I would prefer not to go forward. I'm not comfortable.
No.
Does that give you what you need, Steve? The indication?
I think so. Paul and I will certainly discuss it.
Okay. And Mike, I appreciate you bringing it up. I like Deborah, I applaud your heart. And I think there's a lot of people going through tough times right now, but I think there are going to be other mechanisms that might come forward that we can help people out with. So.
Okay, well, I just wanted to bring it up to discuss it, to hear what council, I kind of knew what the discussion would be like, so this is not a surprise, but I did want to bring it up. I just want to add that there are many complaints to the governor here. I see that he's been in contact with, this is middle of April, 349 instances where people are being evicted. People are not being nice about it, and if you think you're in a tough spot now, if you're going to have to make up some back payments, you're going to be in a tougher spot when you're kicked out of your facility. You won't have a business.
Let's
So
go up to
my
those.
comment, and so I'll take the council's wisdom here, and I'll just disagree.
Okay, let's move on to your next item, which is the resolution to authorize the city attorney to allocate emergency funds. Paul Ellis.
Again, yeah, this was one that Councilman Hobson asked to bring forward. At a limited amount of time to do research on it, but I wanted to provide the council with as much information as I could for your discussion tonight. In your council packet, Kristen Garcia did a small spreadsheet on where we have given money to kind of that social service network, just so you had some baseline of that. You know, we have been giving some money. The mayor had sent out an email in regards to the Family Resource Center and the grant money that they've gotten most recently, just to give some flavor of the funding that they have. And then we reached out to Carla at the food bank to see what her needs were, so we could just at least talk about that tonight. Their food collection is very high right now because, of course, with this, there's more resources being allocated to making sure the food bank's shelving stays stocked. In fact, her issue is not food collection, it is where to store all the food she's getting. We've been helping her with that. We've given her some extra storage where we can in city facilities. We've worked to get her some space in private facilities that have been willing to donate some space. And we're trying hard to clear out one of the old warehouses that the city owns right next door to the food bank that we could give her on a more permanent basis so they would have the space to store the extra food. So in the limited amount of time we had to do research, that's what we came up with for your discussion tonight is that at least we're not seeing an immediate need where our service partners are hurting for money. There seems to be enough to be going around. So anyway, I'll be happy to answer any questions on this also.
Well, the purpose of this.
Okay, I'll go Mike and then you, Jen.
Okay, thank you.
Again, the purpose of this was not to be distributing monies or buildings, but immediately, but because of the situation that we're in and probably will be in for some time, I just wanted to have it be the option of the city to have I don't know what kind of authority the city has to do these things. I'm assuming we have some authority, but it just simply gave the city authority, or the administrator in particular, the authority that if an emergency situation pops up, and we are in an emergency situation after all, but if it's all of a sudden the food bank didn't have any food, maybe this goes on for a while, that there would be something in place so that immediate action could be taken. Doesn't mean you're going to take it or you have to take it. It just gives the authority to take action if you deem it necessary. Kind of similar to that emergency policy that we have, a financial policy that we have in place where the city administrator becomes aware of a situation and can act, has the authority to act in a quick way so that you can deal with the emergency situation. That's all this was. It was nothing monumental, I didn't think anyway. It was just kind of again, I don't know if using the word nice gesture is a correct term here, because it really isn't quite that, but it's just a way that we are showing our constituents that we are on top of it and that we are preparing ourselves and that we're ready and we're willing to take action. And that was really the point of this.
Lacking any real specifics of what constitutes an emergency, like financial policy has a real definition of why we could act on the water line as an emergency. This would need a lot more definition, I would think. And because the council is the one who has the authority to approve spending. So that's just my 2 cents. Jan?
Yes, thank you, Barb, because that was one of the things I was going to say. Is first of all, I don't have a problem helping those three agencies whatsoever. Putting all the pressure and responsibility on deciding what is an emergency on Paul, to me, if there's an emergency, I think we can call the council in very quickly and say, okay, like in the OSO slide, and we do things for that. The one thing I would like to see, and I know that the food bank the tribes just gave them 300,000, so they're going to be okay for a few months anyway. But recently, what was it, a year ago, we designated money to the Arts Council. And what I would like to see is that the city, and maybe at the budget meeting, whenever we get to have one, to where we look at the numbers, but take a percentage of not the money we get in from sales tax, but the excess money that we get from sales tax above and beyond budget. So let's say that we receive 500,000 more than what we had budgeted. And we say, we're going to take 5% of that and put it out to the food bank, to the resource center, and in that flex fund also. Because I believe all three of those really help our citizens. And I would like to see us do something that provides them some more stable income. And to be honest, I did not know until I read this that the city was paying the rent for the food bank, and I can see that we are. And I know that all of us on the council are helping those, whether it's the resource center or the food bank. I can tell you, people are, the council is providing money, they're providing supplies. And I know for a fact that the mayor goes to the food bank every Saturday morning and loads boxes. And so I believe we're doing things that they're seeing us do, and I understand this is an emergency. And if they were to come in tomorrow and tell Paul, we're out, help us. Because I know the resource center does that. They'll post on Facebook and say, hey, we don't have any money. Okay, go down and give them a check. We're out of diapers. We're out of wipes, Then you go to Costco and take it to them. But I would like to see us discuss as a council and say, okay, what could we actually do that would be more permanent, like we did with the Arts Council. And I know that Mike, and this is sort of a little off, but at the bottom of his thing, he listed out the general fund, restricted, the whole thing. Let me tell you what, when Kristen comes here the end of next month and tells us what happened with sales tax on the month since this started, folks, we're going to be in trouble. And we're going to have to sit back and say, okay, what are we going to have to cut? And so I would hate to see us make a decision on what was reported back in the last time that was like January sales tax, because we're not going to have that in a couple of months, guys. But I would like to see us have the discussion and do something that might be more permanent, if that makes sense.
Thanks, Jen. Deborah, and then Michelle.
Thank you. Jan, I like your idea of bringing it forward for discussion at the budget retreat about maybe setting something a little more structured. I'm not comfortable with doing this. Again, Mike, I think it's shows your great heart for the citizens and the community, but I just, looking at what you put for the general fund balance and unrestricted funds available, I mean, that's just not the way I see the budget. that's not a slush fund, that $900,000. I know that that money is already spoken for because we set the budget at the end of the year. So I'm not for doing this. I think that looking and seeing how we have helped, and also just speaking to the nonprofits and saying, what do you need, rather than just assuming. Also, I'm not comfortable with putting this responsibility on the city administrator, because I think there's a lot of unforeseen problems that could arise there. That's putting a lot of pressure on a city administrator from all nonprofits in our city. And that's our job as a city council, is to make those kind of decisions. So I think those are my main reasons, that I just don't think it would be prudent. And I don't think it's a good setting of precedence of how to use ending fund balance money.
Thank you, Deborah. Michelle, did you have your hand up?
Yes. First of all, thank you, Barb, for all the data you sent on the grants that are already or have been given out or will be given out to different nonprofits. That was so helpful for me. I didn't know that. And then the attachment of what the city already pays for at over $100,000 was a great information too. And it makes me feel good that we are doing things to help people. When I hear Mike talk about this, and then when I compare what he wrote, I think there's two different things. And I agree with Mike's intent, and that is just to say, gosh, if there's an emergency, is there something we can do as a council to help? I think Jan's idea of, if there is an emergency, then call an emergency council meeting. I would be absolutely in favor of that. I think it's difficult to define, so then we would help, I guess, define what a emergency is. And then we all have our different ideas about what nonprofit should get money. So I think, my heart is always, there's something we can do to help people. I'm an animal rights advocate, and I think everyone on this council have different things that are so special to them. And so I think that it is important, I guess, to make that statement as a council, that we, and however we do it, and Deborah, I agree, let's get back and let's talk about it in more detail. But I think there's some good stuff here that I wouldn't be opposed to kind of discussing more and seeing if we can do something together, and maybe like Jan's idea, take a little bit from some of the extra tax that comes in, or however we want to discuss it. I don't know. I think it's kind of worth moving forward and discussing in more detail.
Maybe I think I've made a note to add that to the budget retreat that we talk about. I think what Jan said is more sustainable, guaranteed funding for our social service agencies that we depend on. So I think that was a great idea. Anybody else have it? Jessica?
For the spring budget retreat in October.
Something like that. When we're able to meet again.
Yeah.
So I appreciated this last sheet in the packet with all the funds that we give out. I actually didn't know either. I know that we've seen a sheet similar to this in the past. So I was wondering, Paul, if you wouldn't mind going down it, since it's not very big, if you could just briefly touch on what it is that we're covering.
So the first one is the food bank lease. The food bank is located on airport property. However, the airport cannot support that function. So the city itself, the general fund, leases that. We lease that from the airport, and we sublease it to the food bank at no cost to provide their space. So what you're looking at is the lease rate for the land. The building itself was purchased with a community development block grant. The city and the food bank at the time worked together, and we applied for a community development block grant, which funded the majority of the building And then there was some donations made locally from the community that funded some of it also.
So the 44,000 is for 4 years of land lease, or?
Yeah, that would be about right. Yeah. 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 It's not a per year. And then a lot of this is lumped together. So I'm sorry, you know, it's community outreach spending. The Community Resource Center, of course, that's the money that council allocated that we started giving the Community Resource Center this year. And I see Kristen just popped on the screen. Didn't know you were hiding in the background there. She can expand on this much better than I can. Do you recall on the community outreach spending what that entailed?
Yeah, do you want me to go ahead? Can you hear me okay? Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you?
Good evening, Kristen. If you could talk a little louder, it might be easier to hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I can go ahead if you want and walk through the rest of the items. So the community outreach spending, that is what we've spent to date from 2017 through 2020 through a variety of different funding sources. A big piece of that is our city's flex fund, which we've got different grants from the hospital, from Snohomish County, personal donations. So I pulled together the accumulation of what we've spent to date. Most of the items that we've spent in that is related to shelter for homeless or other individuals that are trying to get access to housing, providing meals, providing IEDs so they can either get into treatment services or they can get into housing, providing hygiene things. Maybe they need clothing or backpacks, or they might need a medical device like eyeglasses to get into treatment. So a whole variety of different things, which is in accordance with our flex fund policy. But the big majority of it is really housing and food to get those folks access to services. Then the Community Resource Center is something that the council approved in the budget just to support their operations. So we did pay for that in 2020. And then the rest of the items, the Community Foundation grant, the Emergency Food and Shelter Program grant, the Snohomish County Flex grant, and then the city's Flex Fund balance, all of those items, we haven't spent those funds. That's what we have available funding left to spend through the end of the year. And all of that can be spent on similar items, addressing homeless needs, if they need food, access to shelter, any of those things, or transportation. We have paid for transportation as well. So all of those are really providing those basic needs to assist the individuals in the community.
So would you say the bottom three lines of this chart then are the same as the community outreach, except for you were just saying what was spent already versus what's still there?
Yes. So up above on the 20,490, I wanted to show what we've spent since we had the program up and running. And then the items with the asterisk, I wanted to show that we still have access to funding to continue to provide those needs, at least through the end of the year.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You have any questions for Kristen? Any other questions, I guess I should say, for Kristen? Back to you.
Okay, I'm happy to answer any questions on this, any additional ones, or refer them to Kristen since she's here.
Just a comment is, I think rather than see this come forward to next week for any type of action, what I personally would rather see is it come to council budget retreat, hopefully before October, for a deeper discussion. And also maybe Kristen could give us some guidance as far as maybe, and you, Paul, you know, what sources could some sort of stable funding come from? I mean, I'm concerned when I think about, we're not going to have excess this for the next, whoever knows how long. So anyway, to give us some direction where financially we could do this. to be honest, I have a feeling we're going to be hearing from the health district because we took money away from them to go into our resource center and look what's happened and how much we're relying on the health district. And so I have a strong feeling they're going to be coming back and saying, we need money from the cities if you want us to perform during pandemics. So
Good
we
point.
need to be thinking about that too.
When we have our spring retreat in the fall, hopefully we'll have some better information about some of the CARES Act funding, which is supporting health and other things in the community. But it would be nice to see I think it'd be nice for you all to see a bigger picture of that, so you know exactly where these sources are coming from. I saw heads nodding when Deborah suggested bringing this to a retreat as a subject. Is that where the flavor of the council is on this?
And for Mike, since you brought this up, you know, does that work for you also? I mean, I don't think we can make any type of decision soon and we don't know financially, but I think what's important is that if we all agree on it, that if there is something in place that aligns with this proposal, that we discuss that at the budget. I'm okay with that. I agree with Deborah. How about you, Mike?
I'm perfectly okay with talking about this at the budget retreat.
Well, thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah, thank you very much for bringing them. These are two organizations that do a lot of fundamental, important work for us at the city. And we don't have a health and human services department. So we rely on these nonprofits to do that work in the community. They are important partners. Okay. Paul, do you have any administrative report this evening?
No, nothing else this evening.
Okay. Is there any comments from council members this evening? I should say any more comments? Okay. We did not have any members of the public that wish to speak to the council this evening. And I was looking at the agenda to see what you might want on the consent agenda for next week. I was thinking items 2 and 3, the closeouts.
Right, I agree.
Yeah.
Just paperwork functions. Everything else looks like it should be something that comes forward at the public meeting. Any disagreement to that or anything else you want to add or take away?
Were we going to leave 6 off?
Well, 6 and 7, the council, asked for other actions on.
Okay, thank you.
Those were just discussions for this evening.
Okay.
Okay, well then I would like to move to adjourn.
Question?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Good night,
Good night,
folks.
everybody.
Good night.